All right, so I had talked a little bit about data confidentiality before and data security. So we want to cover a couple of sort of the main answers to the frequently asked questions that we get when we're talking to distributors. And hopefully the idea here is to give you the confidence to know that your data is going to be handled well, that we understand that your POS data is your lifeblood. We also understand that your customer data is even more so. And so these are the steps that we take to cover sort of and make sure that your data is not out there. The first is that we don't talk about participants. It's the one question we get is who's participating in the program, and that's something we absolutely cannot answer. And part of that is because until we get enough participants in, you may see sort of changes within the information. We do our best to mask it as best as possible, but knowing exactly who's in and who's out could present a competitive advantage. It also is sort of in line with the antitrust rules is that we can't really talk about who's participating because then that group could be collaborating within the tool. So the first thing is we won't talk about participants. The second is that only D+R is going to see your data. NAED does not see your individual data, nor can they measure your individual performance. They're trying to represent every member equally, and the best way to do that is for them to just not know. There's information in the data you're submitting that covers pricing. It covers what products you're selling into what geographic areas, and so NAED just really shouldn't be seeing that. So we don't share the individual data with NAED, and obviously we won't share it with anybody else. It's just with you as a participant, and then the aggregate data set. We keep the data internal to D+R, so we have our own drive system which we use with the HVAC industry. So it's really inaccessible to everybody else. And the way we work within our individual product teams too is that we have an HVAC group and they manage the HVAC data, and then we have the electrical group and they manage the NAED data. So only the people that are working on that project at D+R have access to the system. So we are layered behind the standard logins. We have a hosted desktop system. But we have private drives that only the project teams can access, and we only allow them to access the data, if they're actually working on the project. I mentioned before, and Dan covered, that the results are only going to be displayed if individual data can be protected. So the way we work with the market estimates, and Dan will talk a little bit about that later, what we don't want to have happen is you start and you join as a participant, and then all the numbers in the system go up a little bit, and everybody else is looking and saying like, I wonder who joined. So we make sure that if we're going to release any information, that there's really not going to be any way for anyone to tell that you're participating. And we make sure that we have enough participants. If we obviously, everybody is selling slightly different products, and so you may be more lighting focused, or you may be more automation focused. And so we want to make sure we also have a good blend of participants so that, again, no one data set is skewing the results in any way. And then last is, I mentioned we just follow the protocols in compliance with NAED's antitrust policies, and that covers sort of, again, no talking about participants. We're not going to share any individual performance. If you want to talk to us about your individual results, we can do that with you, but we also have to do it in a way that is objective. We can tell you what we're seeing in the information, but we can't help you with any business decisions. We can't help you with any pricing information, et cetera. So that sort of covers the gamut. If you do have questions about the data security and confidentiality, please do let us know. So I'm going to shift gears here and do a quick system demonstration, and really the idea is to give you sort of a sense of what the tool is that you're working with. So it's always nice to hear about it in concept, but actually being able to see kind of the different areas of the site hopefully will help. So I'm going to go through the main areas. I will say if you do want a more in-depth demonstration, or you have specific questions about functionality, or you would like to see certain features, please let NAED know. Erica is the primary point of contact, but we also have the membership services, and they can schedule individual demos, especially if you want other people at your organization to see kind of what you've seen here today. So the first area when you log in, and this is all behind secure dashboard with logins. I bypassed it just for the demonstration so we don't have to wait for everything to load. You'll have the dashboard, and this really is our opportunity to work with you directly. We have an assigned account manager for your organization that will be looking at your data and helping you work through kind of your submission process. But when you log in, we'll have a standard dashboard, and really this is just for us to communicate if we have system updates, when reporting is ready. So we have our sort of communication via the dashboard. We also have sort of tasks. So right now, what the system is telling me as a participant is that I haven't submitted a lot of my data. So it's giving me those reminders. But it'll also roll out when we have new monthly data available, when we have new quarterly reports available or new annual reports available, that those will show up in the My Tasks. And then the recent summary is really, so this is what I can see is members of my team. So these are people within D+R that are part of the D+R and the test distributor branches, is that they can go through and I can see, okay, they're adding a branch, or they've submitted data, or they're downloading specific reports, et cetera. And so this is just a chance for you as an administrator, if you want to see what your team is doing, you'll be able to see that there. Really the next major section is the managed data. So this is sort of where all the data comes in, and this is how we help sort of organize your data. So we have three major areas, but you're going to be working mostly with the first two. So the POS data is where you would do your uploads. So each month you're going to be submitting a POS data feed to us. And we have three ways, two that are working right now and the third that's in development, three ways for you to submit data. The first is just using the upload submission button here. So this is where you can choose the Excel file, you can upload the data, and then the system will confirm it. The other that is working right now is if you have a secure FTP and you want to just do a report drop, we have those available. And then the last that's in development is going to be an API. So once we get that set. So depending on your preference, there's three different ways of submitting. We've tried to be as flexible as possible. Once your data goes in, I've kind of shown the view here where you'll get confirmation just in terms of the number of records that we've received, the total quantity of products that were sold, and the total invoiced amount. And this is really just a sort of an initial gut check to make sure all your data got in. The processors on our side will then take a look at the data. If we have any questions about any of the pieces of data within the set, they'll get back to you with questions. We can view kind of the submission notes if there's any issues with the data. Once the data has been cleaned and processed, we will upload the clean file, and at that point, you'll be able to download that clean data set. And so it'll be sort of a derivation of the BI sheet that I'm going to show you in a sec. But essentially, it's if you want to see what we've done with your data, it'll be your raw POS data with all the categorization attached. So how we've assigned it to particular geographic areas, how we've assigned it to product categories, and how we've assigned it to customer segments. The other area that we'll jump over to is just the branch and branch information, and this is fairly straightforward. This is just as you add or remove branches, we just need to keep sort of a running tally, and this sort of helps us for NAED side in terms of managing your subscription, but it also just gives us a chance to make sure we have enough data, again, within particular geographic areas. Dan mentioned that we track the sales via the ship to zip code, and that's ultimately the sort of the determining factor, but we do like to see kind of what's going on at the branch level. Particularly if you're expanding or contracting, we want to make sure if we see any spikes in data or increased sales that we know, if you opened up a whole lot of new branches, you probably are going to have a lot of new sales, and so we want to make sure we understand that. So that's sort of that's on the data side. The product data is really on our end, and that's more just as we identify new products or we get new data sets submitted, we just want to make sure we have enough of your products identified. And then the last piece is really on the reporting side, and so I've kind of preloaded the reporting dash here, but this is where you can go in and you can select for various time periods. You can select for various geographic regions. For me, as a sort of a test distributor, I have access to all the states in the dummy data. And then I've selected some product categories. And so then as far as the reports that you're getting back, the first one is really kind of just that year-over-year sales growth with the dollars attached. You'll be able to download an image file if you want to submit it into a report. You can download the underlying Excel data that's feeding into this particular chart. You can roll it up by month, by quarter, by year. Since I've only selected 3 years, there's not much to see on the year side, but you can see kind of the ups and downs. And then down below is really the breakouts by those particular filters. So the first is the estimated sales by product type, and this is where you can see the breakdowns between the categories that I've entered into this filter. So if you want to look, and these categories might not make sense in terms of, but you may want to see sort of, is there a correlation in your sales between various product categories? And then similarly, those market sales by geographic region. So you can see your performance within each of the 4 states that I've selected. We're also going to be layering in for the demo right now, the customer segment. We're going to be activating that. And that will be an additional sort of filter. So the limit here, obviously, in those tables is that you're really only looking at one filter at a time. And so if you have your own BI team, you're probably used to doing cross-tabulation or sort of those deep drill downs. And so I'm going to shift gears here too and say when we have the data available, again, we're rolling out that aggregate data set. So I'm going to jump over to the Excel file, which is really, this is sort of the meat of the system. All this data here, and this is, again, the dummy data, but all this data that you're going to be able to download in the aggregate report is what the system is accessing when you do those filters in those custom queries. And so really, it's we're talking about sort of a year, a month, and then we dive into the categorization. So the first is the product categorization. So we're going to have, if we've been able to assign it to a UNSPSC code, and then at sort of that categorization at the very top, and then the first, second, third. So, and then the next would be kind of the geographic codes. So you're looking at sort of, obviously there's some international sales, but we're looking at the US for right now. The NAED regions, marketing regions, census divisions, et cetera, all the way down to the zip code. The NAED, this is going to be for the customer segmentation. So this is an industrial customer, and then we go into those NAECS codes that we talked about before. And then the last is really going to be your sales. So those are the dollar values for all of those. For that particular metric, those are the sales for that particular category. And then how the BI tool works is you'll have 2 sheets. You'll have one that has all of your sales categorized. And then the counterpart sheet, which will be the other tab which we're rolling out, will have the aggregate data set categorized the same way. The challenge will be, obviously, until we get that level of granularity, some of these columns will be blank, and that will just mean that we haven't been able to turn on that granularity yet. But the idea behind it down the road is that ultimately, once we get enough participants, you'll have 2 data sets. One is your own, and one is the aggregate set. And then you can take that to your BI tools and be able to do the benchmarking that we've talked about. And so the exports right now are going to be in CSV format. That seems to be sort of what everybody can work with in terms of uploading it into their system. Down the road, we can take feedback if you'd like to see your data in different formats. We can work with that.